June 2003. Killeen, Texas. The air conditioning in the gymnasium barely works, and the flag in the corner doesn't move. Dwight Kessler is sitting in the third row of metal folding chairs. He's wearing the same button-down shirt he wore to his daughter's wedding because it's the only one he owns that isn't a uniform. When his name is called, he stands up, shakes one hand, receives a certificate in a frame that cost less than lunch, and sits back down. 43 years old, 20 years of service, done. In his back pocket, a bank statement folded in for $11,000. That is everything Dwight Kessler has in the world. He walks across the gravel parking lot to a 1998 pickup truck with paint peeling off the hood, starts the engine, and drives away. Nobody at that ceremony looked at Dwight and thought, that man is going to die a millionaire. And nobody would have had a reason to. But at 73 years old, 30 years after that $20 frame, Dwight Kessler's net worth is $1,400,000. And he never earned more than $71,000 in any single year of his entire life. This is not a story about discipline. It's not about courage. It's not about waking up earlier than everyone else or cutting out coffee and streaming subscriptions. It's about a date on a calendar and what that date did to every dollar he earned after it. At the same ceremony, in the same row of chairs, sitting 2 seats from Dwight, was Merle Vance. Same rank, same pension, same month of separation. At 73, Merle has $140,000, not $1,400,000. 140, same instrument. A result 10 times smaller. And the reason is not what you think. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you 3 forces. The first one explains how $11,000 turned into $1,400,000. The second explains why a civilian neighbor who earned twice what Dwight earned was still working at 68. And the third, the only one that applies to you, whether you served or not, is the simplest of the 3. And if you never wore a uniform a day in your life, stay with me anyway. Because what Dwight had can be built. It's just that nobody shows you the blueprint. It's worth understanding this now. This structure is leaving the American economy. Dwight is one of the last generations that received it without asking. And before you think he invested better than everyone else, he didn't invest better. What he did with the money he earned was one thing that almost nobody does. The military retirement system, in the form most people would recognize today, was built in 1948. And it's important to understand what it was designed to do, because it wasn't designed to create wealth. It was designed to keep people in uniform. The Department of Defense had a problem. Young, trained, experienced service members kept leaving after 8 or 10 or 12 years. The skills the military had spent years building were walking out the door and into the private sector. The pension wasn't a thank you, it was a lock. Stay for 20 years, and you get a guaranteed income for life. Leave at 19 years and 364 days, and you get nothing. That's it. That's the design. Retention, not reward. The wealth was a side effect, a consequence of a structural incentive that nobody in 1948 thought to model 40 years forward. And understanding that distinction changes the way you read everything that happens next. Here's the scale. Today, roughly 2.3 million military retirees in America receive a pension check every month. That sounds like a large number, until you learn that only about 20% of everyone who enters the military actually makes it to 20 years. The other 80% leave before the finish line. No pension, no lifetime health care, no floor. And the ones who do make it? According to a study by the Rand Corporation, the average enlisted service member retires from active duty at 43 years old. 43. Let that number sit for a moment. 43 is the age when most civilians are halfway through a 30-year mortgage, still paying for braces, still 22 years away from collecting Social Security, still pouring money into a retirement account they won't touch for 2 decades. And Dwight, at 43, already has a check coming in every month for the rest of his life, adjusted for inflation, every single year. That 22-year head start is where everything that happened to Dwight begins. Not at the end of the story, at the beginning. Think of it like building a house. Most Americans spend their entire working life pouring the foundation. Rent or mortgage, groceries, car payments, health insurance. Every paycheck, another bag of cement into the ground. And by 65, if things go well, maybe the foundation is finally solid. Maybe they can start building upward Dwight had his foundation poured and paid for at 43. Every single dollar he earned after that date didn't go into the ground. It stacked upward. But having the foundation is not the same as building on top of it, and that is exactly where most of them fail. The first force, what the pension is actually worth. The number everyone sees is $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year. For someone who retired as an E7 with 20 years under the High 3 system. The system that covers anyone who entered service before 2018, that's what the pension looks like in today's dollars. $36,000 a year doesn't sound like a fortune. And standing alone, it isn't. Most people hear that number and think that's a modest income. You can survive on it. But you're not getting rich on it. And they're right. You're not getting rich on the pension itself. But here's what almost everyone misses. That check doesn't arrive for 10 or 15 or 20 years. It arrives every month without interruption for the rest of his life. It started at 43 and it's still coming at 73. It doesn't depend on the stock market. It doesn't shrink in a recession. And every January, it gets adjusted upward for cost of living. Now ask yourself a question. If you had no pension, no government, no institution behind you, and you wanted to create that same $36,000 a year from your own savings, how much money would you need in the bank? The standard benchmark in financial planning is the 4% rule. Withdraw 4% of your portfolio per year, and statistically the money should last through a 30-year retirement. $36,000 divided by 4% equals $900,000. That's the minimum. And if the pension runs longer than 30 years, which it very likely does when it starts at 43, or if cost of living adjustments push the annual amount higher over time, you're looking at well over $1 million. Dwight Kessler was already a millionaire the day he crossed that parking lot. He just didn't have the money. He had something more durable than money, a guaranteed income floor that no market crash, no recession, no presidential election, and no bad decision could take away. And it started paying him 24 years before Social Security would have kicked in for anyone else his age. That's the first force. Not the pension itself. The pensions shadow the portfolio you would need to replicate it, and Dwight never had to build that portfolio. It was handed to him. The second force to build that doesn't exist. Every retiree in America pays a healthcare bill. Every single one, even with Medicare. According to the Medicare Current Beneficiary Survey, the average Medicare beneficiary spends $6,330 a year out of their own pocket on healthcare. That includes premiums for Part B, Part D, copays, deductibles, and prescription costs. After Medicare has paid its share, that's what's left. For a married couple, double it. $12,600 a year, every year for the rest of their lives. This is the number that traps people. It's the reason your neighbor with a solid portfolio, $800,000, maybe $900,000 in retirement savings, still can't stop working at 62. Not because the portfolio isn't big enough, but because the insurance eats the portfolio alive before the retirement even starts. Between 62 and 65, before Medicare kicks in, a couple can spend $40,000 to $60,000 just on health premiums. And after 65, the $6,300 per person per year never stops. Now, look at Dwight. He has TRICARE. While he's working and under 65, his annual enrollment fee is $382. For the family, $765. That's not per month, that's per year. When he turns 65 and enrolls in Medicare, something called TRICARE for Life wraps around it. It becomes a secondary payer filling in the gaps that Medicare doesn't cover. The enrollment fee for TRICARE for Life is $0, not reduced, not subsidized, $0. He pays his Medicare Part B premium like everyone else, and the military health system picks up nearly everything that remains. That's $6,300 a year that every other American retiree pays. For Dwight, that line item barely exists in his budget. This is not a discount. This is an entire category of spending that vanishes. Over 25 or 30 years of retirement, that gap compounds into something enormous, more than most Americans have in their entire savings account. And it's invisible. Nobody sees this on a balance sheet. Nobody counts it as wealth. But it functions exactly like wealth, because it's money that Dwight never has to spend, which means it's money that stays invested, compounding, untouched. The third force, and this is the engine of the entire story. July 2003. 1 month after the ceremony. Dwight walks into the Human Resources office of a school district in Killeen, fills out a stack of forms with a pen that barely works, and starts a new job. Maintenance supervisor. Salary, $52,000 a year. Not a glamorous job, not a high-powered second career, a steady, ordinary job with a parking spot and a lunch break and a paycheck every 2 weeks. Here is where the math changes everything. Dwight's pension covers $36,000 a year. His basic living expenses, mortgage, food, car insurance, utilities, come to about $34,000. The pension alone covers the floor. Not comfortably, not lavishly, but completely. So the $52,000 from his civilian job is not income in the way most people understand income. It's not money he needs to survive. It's surplus. Pure, unobligated surplus. Money that enters his life with no job to do. Now let's compare him to someone in the private sector. A 43-year-old civilian earning $95,000 a year. That's a solid salary above the national median by a wide margin. After federal and state taxes, mortgage or rent, groceries, transportation, health insurance, and the 100 small expenses that make up an ordinary life, that person saves roughly 6% of gross income. That's about $5,700 a year going into a 401k or an IRA. $5,700 a year. That's the civilian number. Dwight earns almost half as much, and he saves $22,000 a year. Let that settle for a second. The man earning $52,000 saves 4 times more than the man earning $95,000. Not because he's smarter, not because he has more willpower, not because he reads more books about money or follows better advice, but because he doesn't need the money he earns. The foundation was already paid for. $22,000 a year for 25 years. At a reasonable average market return, $1,400,000. That is how $11,000 turned into $1,000,004. Not through genius, not through risk, through subtraction, subtracting the need to spend before the money ever arrives. And there's one more layer to this. When Dwight finally stops working his civilian job and enters full retirement, his pension and Social Security together cover his expenses. The portfolio he built over 25 years, he never touches it. No withdrawal rate, no sequence of returns risk. He doesn't have the problem that defines retirement for everyone else, the fear that if the market drops in your first 5 years, your money runs out before you do. The money just sits there, and it keeps compounding. Even in retirement. But if this architecture is so powerful, if the pension plus healthcare plus surplus equals millionaire almost automatically, then why do 37% of military retiree families have less than $500 in the bank? Go back to the gymnasium. Same day, same row, same folding chairs with the plastic seats that stick to your legs. Merle Vance stood up 2 names after Dwight. Same handshake, same certificate, same frame, same pension, same health care, same foundation, dollar for dollar, benefit for benefit. But Merle looked at that pension check on the first of the following month and saw something completely different. He didn't see a floor, he saw a finish line. 20 years of early mornings, missed birthdays, deployments, and orders he didn't agree with, and the country was finally paying him back. He earned this, every dollar of it, and he was going to live like it. The truck came first. Not a used truck, a new one, with leather seats and a payment book that would last 60 months. Then a boat, because he'd always said, when I get out, I'm getting a boat, and he got one. Then a bigger house, because the pension made the mortgage feel manageable, and the neighborhood was nicer, and his wife deserved it. The civilian job came too. Similar salary to Dwight's. But the money flowed in a different direction. The pension covered the truck payment. The salary covered the bigger house. The boat sat in the driveway 7 months a year. And at the end of every month, every single month, there was nothing left. Merle didn't make a catastrophic mistake. He didn't gamble. He didn't fall for a scam. He made the most natural decision a human being can make. He spent the money he felt he had earned. At 68, his pension is still arriving. Still adjusted for inflation, still reliable, but it's not a foundation anymore. It's the entire structure. He has $140,000 in savings and a lifestyle that requires every dollar he receives. He can't stop spending without changing everything about how he lives. He is not broke, but he is trapped, And the data says Merle is closer to the norm than Dwight. 37% of military retiree and veteran families report having less than $500 in emergency savings. More than 75% carry debt. Half of currently serving families report extreme or high financial stress. The pension is one of the most powerful financial instruments in ordinary American life, but it arrives without a label. And when it feels like a reward for the past, instead of a platform for the future, it produces Merle, not Dwight. The psychological trap has a name, even if nobody uses it at the retirement ceremony. The pension feels earned. Earned money feels like it should be spent. And that instinct, that deeply human instinct, is the only thing separating 140,000 from 1,400,000. The pension is not a reward, it's a tool. And tools only work when you use them as tools. Now, what about you? If you never served, you don't have a pension starting at 43. Nobody poured your foundation for free, but the structure underneath Dwight's wealth is not military property. It's arithmetic. Start with your annual expenses, not the aspirational number, the real one. Say it's $48,000 a year, a reasonable figure for a household that owns a modest home, has no car payment, and carries no credit card debt. Social Security at full retirement age might cover $28,000 of that. The gap is $20,000 a year. Now divide $20,000 by 0.04. That gives you $500,000. Not $1.5 million, not $2 million, $500,000. That is your foundation number. The amount that, combined with Social Security, fills the gap and covers your floor for life. Everything you have above that number is surplus. Everything below it is risk. And there are pieces that shrink the gap even further. A paid-off house eliminates your single largest expense line, and for many households, it can cut annual expenses by $10,000 to $15,000 overnight. Delaying Social Security from 62 to 70 increases your annual benefit by roughly 24% over what you'd receive at full retirement age. Part-time work in your early 60s keeps the portfolio untouched and lets compound interest do another 5 or 8 years of work. You are building the same foundation that Dwight received. The blueprint is identical: floor, gap, capital, automation, time. The only difference is that instead of getting the concrete poured for you, you pour it yourself. But there's still a question that hasn't been answered. If the blueprint is the same, why is it so much harder for you? Why does a civilian have to manufacture something that Dwight got for free? There are 5 steps. None of them require a financial advisor. All of them are specific. Step 1, calculate your floor. Not your dream retirement, not the number some website told you to aim for. Your floor. The minimum annual amount that covers housing, food, transportation, insurance, taxes, and medical costs. Write it down. One number. If you don't know this number, nothing else you do with money has a foundation under it. Step 2, calculate the gap. Go to ssa.gov and pull your Social Security statement. It's free. It takes about 10 minutes. That document tells you exactly what you'll receive per month at 62, at 67, and at 70. If you have a pension, add it. Subtract the total guaranteed income from your floor. What's left is the gap, the annual shortfall that your savings need to fill. Step 3, convert the gap to capital. Take your annual gap and divide it by 0.04. The result is your foundation number, the portfolio size that fills the hole at a sustainable withdrawal rate. If your gap is $20,000, you need $500,000. If it's $12,000, you need $300,000. This is not the total you need to retire happily. It's the total you need to make the floor solid. Everything above it is a bonus. Step 4, treat everything above the floor as surplus starting now. Set up an automatic transfer on the day your paycheck arrives, not at the end of the month. The end of the month never has anything left. The day it arrives always does. Move the surplus into a retirement account or a brokerage account before you see it, before you decide what to do with it, before your brain has a chance to call it available. This is exactly what Dwight did. Not by philosophy, by automation. Step 5, if you serve, check 2 things before you do anything else. First, your VA disability rating. As of the latest data, nearly half of all military retirees receive concurrent disability compensation from the VA. That money is completely tax-free. If you haven't filed a claim, or if you filed years ago and your conditions have worsened, you may be leaving thousands of dollars on the table every single year. Second, check your TRICARE enrollment status. The healthcare benefit is worth more than almost any other financial asset you have, and some eligible retirees aren't enrolled simply because the paperwork wasn't completed during the transition window. It can be fixed, but only if you check. Let's go back to the question this video started with. Why do so many military retirees become millionaires without trying? The honest answer is they don't become millionaires without trying. Dwight didn't try nothing. He tried one specific thing, and he did it for 25 years without stopping. That's not effortless. That's quiet. But the real question isn't about Dwight. The real question is why Dwight had the option to do what he did, and most people watching this video don't. In 1980, more than 38% of private sector workers in America had a defined benefit pension. That means a company made a promise: when you retire, we will pay you a fixed amount every month for the rest of your life. The risk of funding that promise sat with the institution, not with you. Today, that number is below 15%, and it's still falling. The pension didn't disappear overnight. It didn't collapse. It was replaced quietly, company by company, decade by decade, with a defined contribution plan. A 401k. An account where you put in the money, you choose the investments, you manage the risk, and you hope the math works out 30 years from now. The institution kept the predictability. You got the uncertainty. No one announced this shift. There was no vote. No headline that said, starting today, your retirement is your problem. It happened in human resources memos and annual benefits summaries that nobody read. And unless you were paying very close attention between 1980 and 2010, you didn't notice until the floor under you was already gone. The military kept its pension, the federal government kept its pension, and the private sector, piece by piece, year by year, dismantled yours. The gap between Dwight's outcome and his neighbor's outcome is not about character. It's not about effort or intelligence or willpower. It's about architecture. One of them stood on a structure that was designed to hold weight. The other stood on a structure that was designed to transfer weight from the institution onto him. This is not a conspiracy. There's no villain in this story. It's a transfer of risk. And a transfer of risk doesn't require bad intentions. It just requires you to not notice until it's done. But now you've noticed, and the foundation can still be built. The blueprint hasn't changed: floor, gap, capital, automation, time. Dwight had the luxury of receiving his foundation pre-built. You have to draw the blueprint and pour the concrete yourself. The difference is that now the engineer is you. So what did Dwight do with the money he earned? One thing. He set up an automatic transfer the week he started his civilian job. Every 2 weeks, a fixed amount moved from his checking account to a retirement account. He picked a broad market index fund, the kind with fees so low they round to zero, and he left it alone. He didn't check the balance during the 2008 crash. He didn't rebalance after COVID. He didn't sell in March when the world felt like it was ending. And he didn't buy in November when everyone on television said it was safe again. He didn't listen to anyone telling him what to buy, what to sell, when to move, or when to panic. For 25 years, he did nothing. That's the one thing, the thing almost nobody does. Not a strategy, not a system, not a secret. The willingness to automate a single decision and then leave it completely alone for a quarter of a century. That's not discipline. Discipline is doing something hard every day. This is a decision made once in July of 2003 in a school district parking lot in Killeen, Texas, filling out an HR form with a pen that barely worked. That single decision made on a Tuesday he doesn't even remember is worth more today than everything else he's ever done with money, combined. The question is yours now. Not whether you served, not whether you got a pension, not whether the system treated you fairly. The question is whether you know your foundation number, and whether you're willing to pour the concrete yourself. Leave a comment if this changed the way you think about retirement, and I'll see you in the next one.